Welcome back. Chapter 4, Section 2 of Melachim Bet. Isha v'Isha Shunamit. Now, this is a great story. It's one of my favorite stories. It's actually chosen as a Haftarah for Parshat Vayera, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Just to summarize the story, last time when I did the video, we talked about a poor woman with 2 children and no food. Now we have this very rich woman who has plenty of food, and she's Machnisa Orchim. She's got guests. She not only for Elisha, because she knows he's a holy man. Not only she prepares a special room and table and everything, and he wants to give her. You feel uncomfortable taking gifts. It's a very interesting thing. When you take a gift, you feel uncomfortable. You always feel this need to pay back, and Elisha feels the need that he has to give her something. And when he asks the servant what is she's missing, she's missing children. I'll give her children, no problem. And of course, the son is born, and a couple of years later, he dies mysteriously. His head hurts, Roshi, Roshi. But Elisha comes back, and just like Eliyahu did, what does he do? He brings him back to life. Happy ending, so we think. And yet, when we look at this story, one of the ways we always talk about is to compare it to other stories. I mentioned this is the Haftarah for Parshat Vayera. Vayera, of course, is the story of the birth of Yitzchak, and let's talk about how this happens. Are there any similarities? Think about it for a second. So, Vayera starts off with a really extraordinarily very rich couple that's childless, and they do a lot of Hachnasat Orchim. That's exactly how Vayera begins. Avram's just done the Brit Milah, and yet he's still out there in the hot desert sun scanning, looking for guests. And because of this tremendous Hachnasat Orchim, he is blessed with a son, and he and Sarah blessed with a son. In both cases, it says explicitly that with Gehazi, when he describes Isha Shinamin's husband, it's like, oh, he's a very old man. And Avram is of course described by Sarah as the same thing, very old man. And both cases, Bet Moed Chaya, it's going to take place the next season, next year. The wording is exactly the same. The baby's going to come this time next year exactly. And when the promise is made in both cases, where is Sarah standing? She's standing at the doorway, if you remember the story. And where is the woman standing? She's also standing at the doorway. And the woman, in both cases, expresses a lot of skepticism. Sarah doesn't believe that this is going to happen. She doesn't believe this is that in fact, that Hashem's going to provide it, and she's gently rebuked. And in fact, so too the woman here. A child is born a year later. And of course, at the end of Vayera, what do we have? The child nearly dies and has to be saved at the last moment miraculously by a malach. Just as here, the child appears to have died, and Elisha has to come and miraculously revive it. So we might say this is okay. It's just like every other childless woman's story. And that's what I asked you to do. I asked you to look up and say, what are you other childless biblical women? We have Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Okay, well, actually, Leah is not childless. Okay, Leah, in fact, is the opposite. She's got no love from her husband, and she's able to compensate by her extraordinary fertility. Of course, Manoach's wife, Esha Shimshon and Chana. And so it should be, it's your typical, okay, somebody doesn't have a baby, and the mother really, really wants a baby. The Chazal say that among the 4 types of people who are dead is a woman who is childless, because there's something essentially missing from her nature, and it's very, very hard to deal with. It's not an easy, it's a very, very difficult thing to deal with. And now we have the story. So it's a happy story on one hand, and there's the power. This is great. But we're going to see there's something wrong with this story that's different than the other stories. And here's the problem here. What's the difference between this story and all the others? I actually just try to think about this. And I want to suggest, if you notice very carefully, Sarah really wants a kid. She's just given up hope because she's 90 years old or 89 years old. You're not expecting a kid at that time. Rivka and Yitzchak are described as davening passionately to Hashem. Chana is in front of the Mishkan, and she is davening to the point that Eli thinks that she's drunk. Okay, Rachel desperately turns to Yaakov, please give me, children. She desperately wants a child. Okay? And yet, when we come to the story of Esha Shunami, what do we see? She's not interested. It's in fact the prophet's initiative. And here, it's unlike the story of Avram and Sarah, where we have a message from Hashem that you're going to have a child. This is Elisha deciding for himself, which is what? She believes in the Navi. She really does believe in the Navi. But when Elisha says, I'm going to make sure you have a kid, she's like, don't play with me. And why did she say don't play with me? She says don't play with me. I'm going to suggest very simply because it's not his role to give kids out. That's a Kadosh Baruch Hu's. And he is so confident in his own abilities. And this is a guy who brings down bears. I mean, that's cool. But he isn't actually. Who says he has the right to bring life into the world? We talked about the fact that Eliyahu had to, as it were, return one of the keys. If you remember the Gemara, he had to return one of the keys. He took the key of rain, and in order to take the key of giving back life, stopping death, he had to return the key. Now we have Elisha doing the exact same thing. And notice how she is. Okay? And there's a very, very interesting pasuk, just one pasuk I want to read, and that's in, if you remember, Perak Daled, pasuk Chav Zayin, when the child dies and she goes to him and they ask, well, why are you going? It's not a Chag, it's not Rosh Chodesh, it's not Shabbat, which is actually interesting. They used to really celebrate Rosh Chodesh. They used to know how to do Rosh Chodesh then. And she went to Isha Elokim, to Har Harmel, and he goes, hey, there's a Shunami woman. What's going on? Ask if everything's okay with the child. He does not know that the child has actually died. And he makes a point of saying that in Chav Zayin. But she came to the man of God by the hill. She grabs his feet, and Gehazi comes and he's like pushing her away. And what does Elisha do? Elisha says, leave her alone. She's bitter. She's upset. But here's the key phrase at the end of the pasuk. What does it say? Yosef, please read. Yosef, wake up. Ve'elokim heli mimeni v'lo higidli. God hid from me what happened, and he hasn't told me. And then she turns and she attacks the Navi. V'tomer hashalti ben me'et Hashem v'lo amarti al tashled oti. When I said to you, I want a son, and did I not say to you, don't play with me, don't fool me? Okay, I mean, she's giving rebuke to the Navi for giving something that wasn't his to give. It's not what, and she directly blames the Navi. This child died in young, too early, because he's not supposed to be here, and you had no right to give him to me. And what you did was you gave me something that really wasn't mine to have, and now Hashem has taken him away. So Elisha sends Gehazi. It's interesting. He says, here, take the stick, that will work. But he hasn't yet awakened, right? So the Navi, who has been so powerful until now, has been found absolutely powerless. Okay? So there are those that suggest that, and this is Rav Elchanan Samach's approach, which I really do not like. I got to be very straightforward about this. But he suggests that what happened was she's happy with her mitzvot, and this is her problem. Okay? And the fact that what has the boy done? Most generally, when a child is born in circumstances, we know something special. Yitzchak is designated to become the successor for Abraham. Shimshon has now become the successor for, to save Bnei Israel from Eshet Manoach. Shmuel becomes, what does Chana do? You gave me a kid miraculously, I'm giving him back to you. What does she do? Oh, good, I've got a kid. Go help your dad in the field. So he suggests that this is really a punishment to the woman in some way or shape or form. If you're given a gift of a miraculous child, you don't waste them on, go pick the crops. That's not what Hashem gave you the nes for. That's one approach. It's an interesting approach. But now she understands but that's almost punishing her, and there's really no hint of that in the text. I tend to go with the approach of Rav Sabato. Rav Sabato suggests as follows, that he goes, this is what we mentioned earlier, that this is Elisha forgets to ask Kadosh Baruch Hu to bring life. Meaning, what is missing from Elisha? Elisha's been doing miracles, but he's stopped praying. Meaning, you can do miracles all you want, but you've got to at least acknowledge the person who's making the miracles happen. And Elisha hasn't done that yet. So this crucial point in his development as a Navi, now he's been a great guy, and he's really a very different character than Eliyahu. He's much more involved with people. He's concerned with their suffering. But he's forgotten the Kadosh Baruch Hu in all this. And that's something that's not forgivable. A little hint, when it says that Sarah gives birth, okay, in Chaf Aleph in Breshit, it says, and Sarah gave birth, and she gave birth to Abram a son, at the time when Hashem had spoken. And what does it say, however, by Elisha? That the woman conceived and gave birth to a son at the time when Elisha had spoken. And that comparison there shows that Elisha has somehow done what? Elisha has somehow usurped God's place, and therefore this becomes the punishment.
And since his mistake is thinking he can independently generate life, he has to turn to Kadosh Baruch Hu directly and say, no, you are the one who has to bring life. Okay? And we'll hold here. It's an interesting thought. We'll talk more about it in Shir. Please read chapters 5, 6, and 7 in Melachim Bet. There's a lot more Elisha stories to do, a lot more miracles to do for Tuesday. And take care. All the best.